Well, hello. This is Juggle Jogging. I'm going to discuss a video that I made a long time ago. Well, 2005. It's not that long ago, about 3 years ago. And just interesting conversation a while back, and I just wanted to go through it a little bit just to have something to talk about, I guess. But I want to set up the video. So what happened was is that we got to talking about the age of the universe, and I'm trying to say, well, how do you know the age of the universe when there's more than one measure of time in the universe? And I was saying that it's not really possible to use expanded time as a valid measure of historical time. And so we're going back and forth on that. And then positively want to know how homosexual relationships affect me. And he wanted to frame it as if he was right and I was wrong, without even considering anything I said, basically. But anyway, but it's just your average discussion with an atheist, the way they do, the way they like to do things. So I'm gonna put this link in here to make sure everybody can participate if they so desire. So here we go, make sure it's in there. Alright, so that's off. Here we go. So, wrong window. So yeah, here we go. I'll just go ahead and see if I can play it. If hold on a second, I'm gonna have to do something with the earphones. Actually, hold on a second. I didn't prepare properly. I'm going to set up some earphones so I can go ahead and maybe hear what's going on without messing up anything. If I can find my earphones. Okay. Let's see how this works. I'm not sure why the volume is so low on this. I'm just going to try to see if I can get the volume up or why the volume. I don't know. Let me try to see what's going on.
The sun's out or not, when I wake up, that's morning. I didn't get my coffee though.
I woke up about 3 o'clock Eastern. So that was a
It's
while
my
ago.
time.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't know
it's
what they're talking
10:30.
about.
10:13
right now.
Talking about waking up.
Anyways, I was going to have a hangout on the morality of what God does or what people think God does, but that might not be unless somebody comes in that wants to talk about that. It's not.
The volume looks good.
It's not
Yeah, I
too
mean, we did that. I
interesting.
did that for like 8 hours the other day, and now he's hang out. Comparison of objective morality to subjective morality, which one's more likely the case. I mean, I do tend to more subjective morality, but I mean, you could probably make an argument for it either way.
Yeah, that's basically it. If it's subjective, it's subjective to whoever is has the morality, and it depends on who you're talking to, basically.
It takes a while for us to get going. Because it's a lot of it is societal based, it's cultural based, it's evolutionary based. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into subjective morality. The objective morality standpoint is that there is one specific moral code that we can look to as a blueprint, I guess you can say, for our own standards and morality.
Yeah, and well, with uh, with people groups that are separated or distant from each other, you're going to have a different set of morality, but it's going to be basically the same as but it's always going to be
How about
subject
how about
to
talking about the
personal
weather?
preferences
I think
or
the weather
whims
might be more interesting.
sometimes.
You know, it goes in the whole concept of what is good, what is evil. Is consequentialism justified? Is the end justify the means? Is something that is maybe good that results in a bad result? Is it still good? You get a lot of nuances of it. I mean, you know, you've heard of the trolley problem, right? You heard of
No, I
that?
mean,
DPR
The who
Jones and a few
problem?
of us were discussing the trolley problem and variations of the other day. Where the yeah, told you this real quick. The trolley problem goes something like this: you are an engineer of a trolley or a train, and you have a switch, and at the end of the road, you have a fat man, and you have a family of like 5 people and their kids and everything like that. And
oh
you have
yeah,
to make the moral decision: do you want to flip the switch, you kill the fat man, or do you want to kill the family? Most people
yeah,
obviously would say, well, 1 for 5 is a good ratio. And then the next level would be the next question, the follow up would be, okay, you're not the conductor, you're on the platform. There's a fat man who has enough mass to stop the train. I mean, it has nothing to do with obviously large people. It's just the story goes that he has enough mass to actually physically stop the train. Do you push him in front of it? Is that moral or immoral to save the family of 5?
yeah. I
It's a
think
tough
there's a
question,
bunch of
obviously.
variations. There's
Oh,
different
dude. Oh, yeah.
variations.
DPR Jones had like 12, 10, 12 different variations or something like that. You come up with quite a few.
Yeah. Well, basically, what's good for me is not necessarily good for somebody else,
That's
and
that's subjective.
that's where that's where people have different values sometimes, and a lot of times it depends on how big your family is as to
Oh
what's
yeah, well, I do
decided.
think values are instilled by family and culture and society, friends even. I think they're subjective morality is prevalent. And I'm trying to finish up Neil Harris's was it Neil Harris, Harris, whatever his name is, the Moral Landscape,
Yeah.
but I haven't got very far in it. He tries to relate it to a scientific standpoint by Sam Harris.
Right. Sam Harris wants to invent a morality that's scientific and not religious based.
Right. Yeah, I'll wake up here in a few, man. Maybe I should go make a pot of coffee so I can enunciate a little bit. This is why I type most of my stuff because I end up running into troubles when I start enunciating things. Um, I woke up, I had like 17 messages, some very, very nice ones. People were very cool today. Not my usual, you know, you're going to hell because you accept evolution kind of shit.
Uh, This is original content. If
Yeah,
anybody wants,
I had a question I wanted to ask. Um, it's not about morality. It's about the age of the universe.
Okay.
Um,
oh, here we go.
how can somebody determine the age of the universe and where time is relative?
Well, I mean, you do understand this is a regressionary model. I mean, we know that things are moving away from each other at a constant rate, right? Almost constant.
Yeah, well, before we get into it, let me just say that the there is no absolute measure or time or distance in the universe. There's no absolute measure of time or distance in the universe. In other words, the measure of time is everywhere from really fast to really slow, and the measure of distance is everywhere from really small to really big. So just Keep that in mind.
So
Right.
just rewind the clock, basically, what we're doing. We're just saying, okay, assuming that's constant has been constant over a period of time, things have had got to been closer together at one point. Obviously, it just naturally follows, right?
Right.
Um, we can do that, and we can regress it back to about 13.8 billion years. The other method is we can also look at galaxies that are near the edge of the observable universe, 13.7 billion light years away, and we can see how far much the light has been redshifted. In other words, how long it's taken to get to us. It tires, it wears out. It's called tired light, basically, and it just causes a redshift. And we can look at the redshift and see how old that light really is, and we can tell that light is originated 13.7 billion years ago.
If time was constant, but time is not constant. Because if time is
Well,
if space is expanding, time is expanding too. So time is not the same rate. Doesn't pass at the same rate throughout time.
well, like I told you before, there's only two things that really affect time. I mean, there's gravitational fields, according to general theory of relativity, and velocity, speed, which would be the special theory of relativity. The faster you go, you
And
have time
expansion.
dilation. But the
And
expansion of
expansion.
space, yeah, expansion. Well, the expansion of space time itself doesn't really change time. It just changes the distance between two objects.
It also, but expand. You can't have space expanding without time expanding. Time expands along with space.
I wouldn't even know what that means by time expanding. I mean,
No, the
you,
frame
you,
of
you,
reference. The frame of reference expands like a big, huge square.
well, it's still the distance, though. I mean, for example, if you're traveling at the speed of light, things are going to contract, and you're going to see to you your frame of reference is the same, but the distance you have to travel is going to be a lot less to you. Like if I'm going 0.9998% of the speed of light, it comes out to like a factor of 5,000 if you use the Lorentz contraction formula. So that means basically instead of being 4.2 light years away, it's going to be a factor of 5,000 less than that to you. So you're going to get there a lot faster than 4.2 light years to travel 4.2 light years.
And
Because
and
that distance you have to travel is shorter compared to somebody who's
and
traveling at a much lower
and the
speed.
distance is not going to be the same. So not only time is not going to be the same, the distance is not going to be the same throughout time. The
Well,
distance
it's
is.
the same thing. The reason you get there quicker because the distance is shorter, so there's less travel time. So they're intricately woven when it comes to that. Does that
Yeah,
make
with
sense?
speed, but I'm
Because
not talking. I'm talking about expansion though.
but expansion is just measuring the distance between something. That's all.
Yeah, but
The
in the
space is
distance,
expanding between two objects.
but both the distance and time are variable,
Correct.
so they change. They're not the same as what they were.
Well, that gets into the whole fact that because you're traveling at a very high rate of speed, the apparent distance between you and where your destination is going to be much shorter. Therefore, you're going to have less travel time. So they're intricately woven like that.
But
But
the
if you're only
problem,
traveling at non-relativistic speeds, those factors don't kick in, and we're not traveling at those kinds of relativistic speeds.
but the problem is we're trying to measure the age of a universe where the the passage of time in the universe is not always the same. It's going
Well,
to be
how would that affect the light coming from the star or the galaxy that we're looking at? I mean, it's still you still have what's called absorption lines and or emission lines, either one, depending on what you're looking at. But these lines, that means that they have certain elements in their spectrum, and it's absorbing the light or emitting light from that wavelength. So if you have absorption lines, and we see a line where oxygen is, where we know that oxygen will absorb that wavelength, and it's been moved from where it's supposed to be all the way towards the red side of the spectrum. It's been redshifted. We know that light has been from a very long distance.
has been expanding away, has been moving away.
It's been moving away from us. Yeah, it's been it's that the Hubble's constant. Even though they're 13.7, 13.8 billion light years away, they're still moving away.
But
The
is it
observable
move?
universe is the same as the full universe. The full universe is something like 90 billion light years across
Is it
rather than 13.8 toward
is it
residual
moving
horizon.
away? Is it moving away or is it expanding away?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, both. Both. I mean, they have a rate. I think it's called a radial
Let me explain here. I think the question was that I was asking. I think it doesn't matter whether it's expanding or moving.
velocity where it has a proper motion, but it's also moving because space time is moving.
Well, I know that moving away would cause a redshift. Would expanding away cause the same redshift?
Both, both would.
I'm
It's
not.
still moving away.
I'm not sure the expansion would cause the redshift.
Well, why not? It's still moving away from us.
Yeah, but it's expanding away. It's different than moving away because moving away is moving through space,
I mean, but to have a model that of like a six
which
thousand euro model, you would have to have a
which would cause
constant.
the redshift. I'm
I
not
was just
so
going to say,
sure expansion would cause a redshift.
but you would still have to have a model that basically would take something from a 6,000 light year distance and put it at a 3.8 billion light years distance in a matter of 6,000 years. Um, that's a lot of distance to travel in that limited amount of time. I don't know, no mechanism to do that. You need something on the order of 100, 200 million kilometers per second per megaparsec to have that kind of
Well,
travel.
I'm sure there are parts in the universe that are less than 6,000 years.
Well, we kind of have the idea that the entire thing came into being at the same time.
Okay, this is yeah, this is not exactly right because the time clearly runs at different rates in the universe, and so that's the whole point that I'm trying to make is that all of time came into being at a time, and it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what time it was. It just that time itself is a fabrication because time, the rate of time depends on the amount of gravity there is where you're at. And even the measure of distance depends on the amount of gravity where you're at. So we exist in a fabrication of time and distance, or limited time and distance actually, because it's limited. Instead of being instant, it becomes limited. So that it takes times for things to happen, and we have limited space for things to happen in. So let me go ahead and continue here, if I may.
Right.
It's homogeneous.
But
I mean,
in other words, the passing of time is meaningless.
well, I want to say it's meaningless. I mean, obviously, the passing of time has to be relative to something. I mean, we define time as the distance between two
It's
events.
but it's a fabrication of expanded space that expands time. And you can't use expanded time as a valid measure of actual time.
Well, I still don't know what you mean by
Actually.
expanded time. I mean, again, we can see expanded space because we can look at 2 points and see that they've moved away from each other. But
I was trying to explain that that the rate of time changes with the expansion. So as things are expanding, the rate of time is changing. So if things were smaller in the past and they expanded into the future, that means things in the present weren't going at the same rate of time in the past. So that's basically what I'm saying.
expanded time would imply that you have a future moving away from the present at a different rate, and I couldn't even conceptualize something like that. I don't know what you would mean by that.
But it's observed. It's observed that time passes by at a slower rate inside the galaxy than outside.
On a higher gravitational field, yeah, it passes by more slowly. Sure, that's relative to you.
And the basic reason we see galaxies is the fact that time is slowing down in the center of the galaxy, and that's why there's more space inside that small area. What we perceive as a small area actually has a lot of area in it, but it's contracted space.
Um, I don't think you'd have enough gravity to actually do that. Maybe by like the center where you have a supermassive black hole. Obviously, there's a huge
I think Steve is laughing at me.
amount of gravity there. But I
Well,
mean, we're
well,
observing
yeah,
it pretty well as is, as it was like Andromeda. We're observing it was millions of years ago. But I don't think the gravity is going to have any effect on that as far as our observations.
well, can you tell me how far it is to the black hole in the center of Andromeda?
Well, I mean, Andromeda is 2.2 million light years away, right?
To the edge of it. How
And it's
far is it
probably
to
what
this?
I don't know, the 100,000. I mean, the Milky Way is 100,000 light years across. I don't know what the diameter of Andromeda is. So you
How,
could basically just take that and divide it by half, and so add an additional 50,000 light years, I guess.
but we know it's not the
I don't
same
know. What do I look
distance
like?
to. It wouldn't be the same distance to the
Astrophysics?
center because it takes light longer to pass through a gravitational lensing effect
But but the
because
distance would be the same. There's
it's
not
actually passing through more distance. That's
the
what makes
lensing
gravity.
effect would be something behind the black hole. In other words, if we had a black hole and an object, and normally we couldn't see that object because it's too far away, but because of gravitational lensing, it basically causes the light to go around the black hole, and we can see more of that object because it's a focused effect. That's why it's called gravitational lensing. If the black hole was not there, we would not even see that object or see
Well,
less of that object.
the magnifying effect is caused from light having to travel a greater distance actually slowing down or
It's causing
in
it.
effect
No,
slowing down.
it's due to the light curving. Gravity is causing the light to curve.
Well, actually, it's the time space. The increased number of frames of references are causing it to take longer to pass through an increased frame number of frames of references. That's why it takes longer for the light to reach us because it's actually traveling farther. That's what causes the
I don't know
gravitational
if you mean
lensing.
never a frame of references. It's not like a movie. It's not like a movie where each thing is a frame. Frame of reference just means where you're starting from your observation point.
Well, it's
But
traveling a greater distance. That's what causes the lensing
well,
effect.
yeah, I mean, because it has to bend around the black hole, so that is a greater distance it has
In
to travel.
in other words, our lenses that we use are made of glass.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why there's a magnifying effect is that it takes light longer to pass through the thicker part of the glass than it does the thinner part of the glass, and that's what causes the magnifying effect.
It's a similar process. I mean, again, it's the same type of lensing.
Because it slows down the light. In other words, it
When
does
light
this.
passes, but that's a different principle because that's light passing between two mediums, and when light
Right.
passes between two mediums, it causes a change. The
It's
same thing in the nuclear field is what's called Cherenkov radiation,
it's a
and
different principle, but it's the same effect because it's taking longer for the light to pass through.
it's a similar effect. I mean, have you ever looked at those pictures like these reactor piles and they're glowing blue? You see this blue glow? That's Cherenkov radiation, and that's produced from that very fact that the light is being produced in the
Yeah, which is kind of irrelevant, but go ahead.
water is having a different speed than light being produced or going to the outside of the water. There's a different density of the medium, and that produces that bluish weird glow.
In space, right?
I don't know if it could be in space. I don't never
What
seen
are
it
you
in
talking
space.
about? In water or
Yeah, light in water will travel
like the
slower
blue
than it
sky?
does.
You're talking about the blue sky?
Now that's Rayleigh scattering. Um, water and light in water will travel a little bit slower than it does in space. It's a different medium.
Yeah.
Okay, and that produces a type of radiation called in a nuclear reactor called Cherenkov radiation. It's like this weird bluish glow. If you look at these older piles, you can make it out. It kind of looks like St. Elmo's fire, but for totally different principle.
Okay, this is observed when you're talking about in outer space.
No, it's reserved. It's observed in reactor plants.
Oh, in
In the
reactor.
old
Okay,
type, they had what's called a graphite pile, and it's basically these things underwater, and then you had the control rod mechanisms, and you had to pull them out,
oh,
and
okay.
it was all open for the most part. It wasn't
Okay,
as
and it causes a
shielded as it was
bluish.
these days.
It
Yeah,
causes a bluish glow. Then.
it was causing a blue glow
Yeah.
known as Chenikov. But
Okay.
I'm inviting a few people here. I, what happened to Isaiah?
I don't know. Maybe you got a problem. But
Yeah, this is about the time when everybody avoided me like the plague, and they still do. It seems I can't get anybody to. I can't get anybody to have a conversation with me. It seems like I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if it's me or if it's they just don't want to don't want to have a debate with me. I mean, it's almost like they're running from me, maybe, or maybe I'm just being whatever. Maybe I'm just wanting attention or something. I don't know. Wild Heart says I have 3 socks, which are unfortunate. You have 3 socks? I think I only have 2 socks. I got one. Yeah, I only have 2 socks. Like I'm supposed to.
can you see that there was no time until space expanded?
Well, that's generally the consensus that prior to the rapid inflationary period, t equals zero, that there was no time. The
Right.
singularity existed at zero time. But I mean, even if the Big Bang event didn't happen, I mean, obviously the inflation period did happen because we're still expanding, we're accelerating even. We're actually moving faster than we should because in a conventional explosion, once it explodes, obviously it slows down, right?
It's
And we
faster
would
than
thought the same
expected.
thing that the universe would be slowing down and eventually stop and maybe even reach a tipping point called the mega point and come back together and then form a singularity again. It's kind of this big old oscillating thing. But we're finding out that not only is the universe accelerating, it's actually expanding at a higher rate. It's moving faster and faster and faster away from each other. That's what they attribute to what's called dark energy.
But you don't think that the increased area inside of a galaxy would account for that? Increased space, or which is
No,
actually
we're
contracted?
no, they're so far away. They excuse me. Gravity is one of the actually is the weakest of all forces. I mean, it is infinite. It has an infinite distance, but it is so weak that it can be pretty much considered negligible or
But if you
non-existent
have
in most cases.
if you have a
We're not
lot of
affected by Andromeda's gravity by any real, probably even measurable amount.
but
Even
if you
though
have
gravity is infinite.
a lot of area that's contracted by the force of the gravity of a black hole, then you're going to have a lot of mass in a very small area, relatively speaking, compared
Correct.
to us.
Correct.
So,
They are so far away.
so there's a lot of area that's in a small area.
Well, the
There's a
area of
lot
a
of
black hole is actually defined by the surface area of the event horizon. That was the full firewall paradox that Leonard Susskind and Hawking were trying to debate and trying to resolve. That the actual surface area of a black hole is the entire event horizon around it. That stores all the information of anything that's ever fallen into the black hole. So
okay,
they were
but I
arguing
will.
whether information is lost, and they found that it's not because it's actually encoded on that event horizon. So that is the surface area of the black hole. That is the mass of the black hole.
Which should be relatively small when we look at it because it's all compacted into a very small area relative to us.
You talk
Even
about
though
the singularity.
there's a lot of area there, there's a lot of matter there, there's a lot of space there relative to us. It looks very small. relative to us. I
Well,
mean,
it's definitely compacted.
and because of the distance, because when you look at the black hole of the Milky Way, you can see the orbit of the stars zooming around
Right.
a very small area.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's a very
But it's still a pretty decent distance from each other. I think there's like one star that's pretty close to the center, near the black hole. And yeah, and you've seen it. So if you've watched the time elapse of the stars in the black hole, you'll see it go like this, and all of a sudden it'll shoot
elliptical,
around.
right?
And
It's
yeah,
elliptical,
it'll be an
yeah,
elliptical curve, and it'll shoot around. That's obviously implying there's a very massive object there, uh,
right,
causing causing that orbital pattern. But they're still pretty far distance. I mean, it's not like it's like down the street. It's still a couple thousand light years away, probably.
right. It is. It is very far, considering the fact that the
Well, at least
the
a few light years
distances,
away.
the frames of references are all very, very, very small. Even in other words, the you know, like I was trying to say before, the distance from here to the center is very, very, very far away because of the
Right.
shrinking frames of references.
See, I don't know if you could even say there is a center of the black hole. I mean, I read Davies and I read Hawking and Penrose and Minkowski and I don't know if it is even definable of what the center of a black hole would even be because once you get past the event horizon, you actually change space time. You actually they actually shift, believe it or not.
Right, but I'm not talking about passing the event horizon. I'm talking about until you get up to the event horizon. What goes on beyond
Oh,
the
okay,
event horizon, I'm not even
okay.
interested in. I'm just
Well,
talking
when you're
about
getting toward the event horizon, obviously you have a gradient of gravitational force. That's what's causing that spaghettification on smaller black holes. On very large black holes, you wouldn't have that spaghettification because the gradient would be a lot less. You would not have a higher disproportion of gravity between like your foot and your head that would stretch you apart. You could actually survive and get into the event horizon.
but the distances become smaller and the time becomes smaller too, less.
Yeah, well, time would become slower. I wouldn't use the word
Yeah. It,
smaller and become
yeah,
slower, right?
it'd be
But that's just remember that's just to an outside observer looking in. I mean, okay, if you fall into a black hole, you're not going to notice anything. And we'll assume it's massive, so it gets spaghettified. But to you, you're really not going to notice anything.
but
Um,
everything would be a lot closer though, I think.
well, you would start to see things moving around you faster on the outside. And I mean, when you reach a point, you're slowed down so much that somebody who sees you going in, they're not going to ever see you actually go in. They'll see you stop at the event horizon and then kind of just fade away into this electromagnetic infrared radiation as the photons take longer and longer to get out because they're being expanded. You're never going to actually see anything fall into the black hole. From your point of view, time has stopped for that person. They exist and they will always exist stopped on that event horizon.
Right. I got a question though. When you look at the spiral arms, are they leading the rotation or are they following the rotation?
Well, I mean, there's that whole argument about the spiral problem, the sterility of the left-handed and right-handed spin of the arms, and I mean, we've hypothesized dark matter to explain a lot of the anomalies of the spiral things. I mean, I think that it's actually probably from the center, and then the spiral is just the angular momentum carried over, like it would be from any other type of a
But
system that's rotating like that.
but the majority of the spiral arms, are they leading or are they trailing
Well,
the rotation?
I think it's the same thing. I mean, what do you mean? Are they comparison to what? I mean, they're leading or trailing compared
The,
to.
the center, are they leading the center rotation or are they trailing it?
Oh, well, like I said, I think they'd probably be trailing. I think that some of the angular momentum would be concentrated in the center, and then the spiral arms would be following, leading that, and have a lag. If that's what you're asking.
Well,
But
I know that
I
some
honestly have
of
no idea.
I know that in some cases they're leading the rotation.
Yeah, I've heard. I was to say there's some problems with the problem the spiral arm problem, but I said that I think they kind of rectified that by using dark matter to explain those types of things.
Well, I can
It's
understand.
adding more gravity to, and that's causing them to be a leading rather than a lagging of the spiral arm.
I could understand it leading because the time goes faster on the outer edges than it does in the center.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I don't
Well,
know. Get
when
a
they
physicist in here, man.
but when they say that the object's moving for example the sun's moving near the black hole, they say they're moving close to the speed of light.
Well, some objects would be accelerated close to what's called the photosphere. And if the photosphere is basically just objects traveling at the speed of light that are stuck in that particular region of space because it's not great enough for it to fall in and it's not great enough to escape. So it's this massive area of light.
But they
Very hot.
but they would be traveling through more frames of reference too. So that's why
I
it would
don't
be
know what you
close
mean
to
by
this.
more frames of reference. There's no such thing as more frames of reference. It's, frame of reference is just anywhere you pick to be your initial starting point from that position,
Yeah,
observing
but
everything
relative
else.
to us, they're passing through a greater number of frames of reference. In other words, we see the movement,
Uh,
but it's going through a lot more frames of reference than where we're at.
we're only concerned about how our observation is from our frame of reference.
Well, that would make it be traveling. That would mean it'd be traveling close to the speed of light.
From our perspective or from its perspective?
From its perspective, because of the fact that it's traveling through so many frames of reference.
Yeah, I'm not
In
following
other
what you're
words,
saying.
we the frame. Let's take a frame of reference of 186,000 miles a second. So it travels 186,000 miles in 1 second. Now that 186,000 miles miles is going the squared or the cube, whatever, is going to shrink the closer you get to this mass of the black hole. It's going to be smaller. So there's going to be a bunch of frames of reference of 186,000 miles that are all bunched together near this black hole. And
But
when you have something when you have
speed.
something orbiting around the black hole, it's going through many frames of references of 186,000 miles that are all bunched together around the black hole.
How, how,
Gravity.
how, how is a speed a frame of reference? A frame of reference is a vantage point.
No, the frame of reference is 186,000 miles. That shrunk relative to us.
That's just the speed. Uh, I mean,
No,
I kind of,
no, it's
kind
the
of, kind
distance.
of.
186,000.
I might have to try to explain a little bit here because I have to explain because I don't think Steve is getting it. The frame of reference. When I talk about a frame of reference, it's a distance and the time it takes for light to travel a distance. So what happens when you get near a black hole? The distance is going to contract and time is going to slow down. So your distance is going to be smaller relative to say where we are at, and your time is going to be slower relative to where we are. So that in order for light to travel 186,000 miles, it will travel 186,000 miles just like everywhere else, only that 186,000 miles will be a shorter distance relative to where we are. And time will be at a slower rate relative to we are, so that instead of light traveling 186,000 miles in 1 second, like 1,001, it'll be a shorter distance relative to where we are, and it'll be a longer time, so a time frame, so it'll be 1,001. In other words, time slows down, so it takes longer to travel less distance relative to where we are. So that actually slows down the speed of light.
plus the fact that there's more sections of 186,000 miles in contracted space or contracted distance, so that when the light goes through an area that's contracted, it's going through more distance. So not only is it going through more distance, light that is, not only is light traveling through more distance, it's traveling at a slower rate of time. So that really slows down. So that's what the gravitational effect is, and that's what I'm trying to explain to Steve.
1,000 miles is a distance that shrunk.
Well,
relative to us. Relative to us, it's
Oh,
small.
okay. You're just okay. You're okay. Okay, I'm kind of following a little bit. Well, again, that's what goes into that Lorentz contraction that I told you before. That because you're going at a higher velocity, it's one divided by one minus the square root of v squared divided by c squared. If you normalize from c to one, you just put c1, and then you change v to 0.9998. That gives you a number, and that number is the contraction factor, and that's what I was saying before. The higher you're going, the larger that contraction factor. So if your v is actually equal to c, and you're traveling at the speed of light, you basically have zero time. Your factor is infinite. So basically, to like a photon that's produced at the edge of the universe, it actually is produced and absorbed by your retina at the same time. It experiences no travel time. No, it is just boom, boom. It happened at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because the length has been contracted such that its starting point and its destination have become pretty much next to each other, the same spot according to its
Right.
frame of reference. But
Because it takes no time to travel through no space.
correct. Well, it's still traveling through space from our perspective.
Yeah, because we exist and expanded.
Right, but to the photon, it hasn't traveled anywhere. It basically ends up where its its destination is the same as the starting point. Basically, it has zero travel time because time does not pass for a photon.
Right. But before you get to that stage, you're still traveling near the speed of light.
Correct, and you still have you also have a squishing effect or a contracting effect. So, I mean, it's in theory we could actually go to the edge of the universe if we were traveling very very high rates of speed near the speed of light. We could get to the edge of the universe in a matter of a millisecond even. But the problem is the rest of the universe will still have aged, 13.7 billion years, and we couldn't even get back. We couldn't even signal Earth. We couldn't tell anybody about it anyways.
Maybe my explanation didn't go through because I think I had the mic turned on. But anyway, let me try again. When you dilate distance, which was just detected recently, before this conversation, after this conversation, distance dilation was detected through the interferometer, and so that distance becomes more contracted or smaller. And Steve he's always talking about special relativity. He wants to always talk about speed, and I'm trying to talk about gravity, and which is general relativity. And when you talk about speed, it's special relativity. When you talk about gravity, it's general relativity. And so what I want to talk about is I keep trying to talk about general relativity, and he keeps talking about special. But anyways, I think he finally got the idea that I'm talking about general relativity, where distance is contracted and time slows down, and so that it takes longer to travel less distance relative to where we are. So not only are there more frames of reference in one place relative to where we are. That's what the diagram of the hole is supposed to represent. The gravitational well hole. That's what that's supposed to represent. Is that there's more frames of reference in one location than outside of the gravitational well. Of course, everything is a gravitational well. We are in a gravitational well because because we are experiencing a rate of time and a measure of distance. So the rate of time and measure of distance is all a fabrication anyway. But when you're near a large gravitational well, then there are more. There is more area there than there is where we are, because the area where we are is spread out, is a larger area, relatively speaking. That's what general relativity is, and that's what's being measured when we measure gravitational waves. So that when, instead of it like traveling 186,000 miles in a second like 1,001, and it's 186,000 miles, it'll be, what's up, Jesus is Lord, what's up? It'll be 186,000 miles, a smaller 186,000 miles, but it'll be 1,001. So the time slows down, so it takes longer to travel less distance, relatively speaking. So that's what I'm trying to explain. And I, I think I was talking before with the mic turned down.
If we went to, like, even if we went to the nearest star, let's say we went to Alpha Proxima, 4.2 light years away, we're traveling pretty much at the speed of light, but not quite, just underneath. Let's say we get there at a millisecond, we come back in a millisecond. Well, the Earth still has aged 8.4 years. That's not going to change.
Yeah.
So if we go to the edge of the galaxy and come back, the Earth is not going to be here, obviously. It's going to be, 27 billion years later. So the universe will have aged by then. There may not even be stars at that point.
Right.
Where's all your peeps, Jungle? You gotta get some of your people.
I don't know. I invited everybody. And
no, what are you dissing you for? You're not Mr. Popular no more. What's up with that? We love you, though.
No, I don't think I ever was popular, but that's another story.
It's hard for me to invite people when you're hosting. I have to do it the old-fashioned manual way. But
yeah, so when we're watching a star, and they filter through the Milky Way, they can see the stars orbiting near the black hole, and you can see them speed up as they make that elliptical turn.
Yeah, isn't that pretty cool?
Yeah, but they must be flying near the speed of light at that point.
I think they're going. Yeah, I think they're going near relativistic speeds. Yeah. It's been a while since I looked at that, and I wanted to say that the black hole is only a few light years away from the stars, not thousands. It's only a few. But yeah, they're probably going a good percentage of the speed of light.
Because they look like they're going fast to us, and they're actually traveling through more frames of reference than what we can see.
I'll look that up and I'll get back to you on it, because I'm pretty sure that they are traveling a noticeable difference. I figured at one time that if you're traveling at 20% of the speed of light, you had a factor of 1.25. So that was about where you start noticing relativistic effects. It's about 20% the speed of light. Other than that, most Newtonian physics will model it just fine. When you're dealing with 100 miles an hour, obviously there's no relativistic effects. You could use either formula for them. I mean, you could use relativity to describe Newtonian velocities. It's just more complicated to do so.
So how would you know what kind of frames of reference they're traveling through? By the distance.
I don't grasp your, or as they would say in Stranger in Strange Land, I don't grope your definition of a frame of reference. I mean, it just means that
in other words,
where we're looking from.
They're going through a lot of square miles of 186,000 miles.
But that's not, excuse me. But that's not a frame of reference. 186,000 miles is not a frame of reference. I don't even know how to make that.
Well,
but like I said, if you get a physicist in here and ask him, maybe he might be able to help you out on that one. Because when I'm out of my area of interest or knowledge, I mean, you know me, I'm the first one to go, I have no what the fuck idea you're talking about. So, it's hobby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the distances
I wish
are
I could
small,
explain better the other day on Netflix Hangout, because I was really tired, and I was trying to explain that point that the amino acids of the protein have a polypeptide bond, and I couldn't get it out. And basically, Sam the scientist jumped in, and it got kind of ugly, as you saw.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that too much. I mean,
Oh
I know.
no, I don't give a shit. I know how Nephilim is, man. Just like let him butcher and try to twist things around. I mean, he's got 207 views on a big deal. I get 2,000 with 8,000 views and hanging out in Nadia's chat. We saw people.
I gotta muzzle Steve's
Literally, there's
mouth.
like
He's using
8,000
bad
people
words.
watching. So
Yeah, we got 1 viewer, then we got 0 viewers, and we got right now.
yeah, you know what? I think that never should be shown consistently, like everybody can see it. I don't know why it's just the host that can see that number.
Yeah, I'm wondering why. Well, I guess I don't know. I would think that in Google you could have a lot more viewers, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just
Well,
don't
I
know
know they're
what
trying
this.
to disassociate viewers or disassociate the Google from the YouTube. I mean, they integrate them and now I guess they're splitting them up again or something. I don't know. It's been such a crappy procedure, and the user interface has been horrible.
Yeah, they seem like they're fighting against each other too, or something.
Yeah, I know. I've noticed it as well. So, dude, I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah.
But you got to get some people, man. I mean, I could send out it from my list if you want, but I know you like hosting. And
I could send them out the invitation again. I suppose it's been a while since I did it, so maybe I could get away with it.
I mean, get Redbox and maybe NeoCloud and
Oh
CJ
yeah,
Dub.
yeah. It goes out to all of them peoples.
Okay. While you do that, I'm gonna burn one real quick. I hate to have dead air, but you got nobody
Okay.
else in to keep you company.
I got a discussion group, 51 viewers. Okay, try this.
Yeah, I'll be back.
Okay. It won't let me do it. Yeah, well, it's live and you can't like leave it quiet. Otherwise, people get disinterested, and
With your zero viewer.
not that they would be interested anyway. But I mean, let me see.
Well, I wanted to get some people. I wanted to like we were discussing the principle of methodological naturalism in science, and someone was making the argument that we should remove that constraint, that philosophy from it. And I would have liked to have.
This is, of course, vintage jungle jargon, original content.
I've gotten more into that. I mean, I'm not an ontological naturalist, so I don't discount the possibility of supernatural. I just discount it as far as in science, it cannot have a conclusion that is based upon a supernatural causation.
Well, I can see an otherworldly causation because there's no physical thing that can cause any of this living organisms that we see.
Well, we don't know that, and that falls into the God of the gaps, though. You can't just because we don't know something, you can't assert something else to be true.
But we do know that there's no mechanism that was ever seen that can make any directed working
Seen,
mechanisms.
but
But
there are hypothetical mechanisms. There are papers written out there that give
right,
accounts for possible abiogenesis.
so
So there
right,
is
which
hypotheses
don't
out there.
which don't prove anything.
So
So
correct. I mean,
the
science, you don't prove
possibility
anything in
the
science.
possibility is still there,
Right.
probably.
That's why I said I'm not an ontological naturalist, so I'm not saying that the causation cannot be supernatural, but we have no mechanism to determine what a causation would be for supernatural. I mean, we can't even see if there's ghosts or anything.
Well,
There's
that's
no
because
mechanism
we're
to actually test
That's because we're limited to the natural. We're not in the supernatural realm. I mean,
Well, and I would agree with that. However, somebody made the argument, a Calvinist made the argument that everything is supernatural and there's no differentiation between natural and supernatural.
Yeah, let me just say here, yeah, everything is of a supernatural origin, but once the creation was made, then the natural world goes about its natural way. And God even uses the natural things to accomplish his purpose. So even though everything is natural, it does have a supernatural origin regardless. And the supernatural, of course, would be like walking on water or raising an axe head, making an axe head float. Of course, you could theorize other natural things, but basically they're supernatural events like raising the dead and healing withered arm. That's supernatural event. But but everything else is natural, but it's a supernatural origin. That's the difference. So everything is of a supernatural origin doesn't mean that it's not natural.
And I found that a very untentative position because go ahead.
Let me rephrase it. We're not outside of the physical realm. I mean, we're confined to the physical realm right now.
I mean, so do you distinguish between supernatural and natural? Do you place a boundary between the two?
Well, yeah. The supernatural is spirit. It's not physical. It's not something you can detect other than.
But he would have made the argument that even spirit is natural. I disagree with that because I don't see any way of testing that. There's no empiricism there.
Well, in a sense, there is such a thing as the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of understanding, the spirit of counsel, the spirit of strength, and you can even see these spirits in animals. The spirit of knowledge and the hope of good things. There's these are like built into us as creatures, and of course we can either choose to have them or not choose to have them too, for that matter. So later they're going to be talking about, or we're going to be talking about the free will, whether or not we have a will. Of course we have a will. If you didn't have a will, you couldn't choose between being a drunkard or being sober or whatever. Anyway, let's continue.
You cannot test it. You can't experiment with it. There's no mechanism to even quantize it or make any qualitative analysis for what spirit would be. I mean, what is it measured in? You have 3 degrees of spirit, or I mean, what is it? What's the measurement for spirit?
We have a comparison of what spirit would be, and that's entanglement, and the speed and the photons arriving instantly. But that's a comparison to the spirit who is all instant.
Well, I mean, I can see your analogy, but again, that's just quantum entanglement.
But that's a
my question was,
comparison.
what would we measure spirit in? Is it measured in watts? Is it measured in ergs? Is it measured in dynes?
Right.
Do we create some kind of unit of measurement for it? And what would distinguish one unit of spirit from another unit of spirit? I guess I'm asking. I find no possible way to do that.
No, you can't really detect it, except that other than that spirit speaks to us. He conveys messages to us.
Well, you're talking about like a Holy Spirit. I'm talking about like individual spirits, the soul, I guess you can say.
But that would be the same thing, as you can't really measure that either, I don't think.
No, that would be my point. You couldn't. I draw a line between the supernatural and the natural. I think they're 2 separate things. When we were trying to define natural, it took like an hour just to get a working definition of natural, which I thought was very pedantic and It got down that rabbit hole of just definitions at that point, and those are the kind of arguments I kind of avoid because
Well, the natural would be physical, a physical fabrication of time, limited time and limited distance where things take place, um, things with mass take place, things that have mass and matter take place, or physical fabrication of the table of elements and molecules. That would be the natural.
I don't find any productivity out of them.
But we know there are spirits though, right? Because everybody's spirit is different. Even in twins, they're different spirits.
Well, that to me is a faith-based assumption. Again, I don't think there's any way to demonstrate that in science.
So you would see that as a physical property.
That would fall under methodological naturalism. That there would be a physical, natural explanation for differences. I mean, even in twins, I mean, you
E-
know that the genomes are not exactly alike. They're pretty.
So is the choice physical or is it spiritual? The
Well,
choice.
until spiritual can be demonstrated, I wouldn't say that that would be an explanation for anything. I wouldn't be able to say it was one or the other because I don't have the other two to have as a possibility because I don't know if the spirit exists.
Because that's what is spiritual in theology is our choice. That's what determines spirit.
Well, do you believe we have free will? Because that was another discussion we're having about whether free will does exist or not, and there's different arguments for and against it. Some science based upon brain chemistry and the
Well,
neurology of the brain. Do we actually have a free choice?
yes,
Yeah, chemicals don't determine your choice, by the way.
The other ones are just more free agency, I guess you can say, arguments.
yes, we have free will, and our free will is determined or guided because we were made to be like gods in this creation. We have autonomy. We choose what we want to eat, what we want to do in life, and everything. And we guide our choices by whether or not something is true or not. And that's what determines whether it's good or bad, whether or not we're following the truth.
I
Which I,
would call that free agency. Um, I mean, I do believe we have free will to make our own decisions, but there are scientists out there that say we don't have free will, and they're secular scientists. But
but I know, but I would disagree with that
yeah, and like I said, I kind of do as well. I can see their argument
because
that,
otherwise you couldn't change your mind. That's what you do.
well, yeah, they're breaking down to the chemicals. That it's just chemical processes, and so these chemical processes are what are making your decision for you.
Is based on what you believe, and what you believe is not a chemical process. It's either true or false. And if you believe the truth, then you walk in the light of the truth of God's word, or you'll believe and be misled by lies and walk in darkness, and that's not determined by chemicals.
Well, your will is what's making your decision for you.
But again, is a will a tangible thing? Can you quantify will?
It's the will. Yeah, the will is definitely seen because I willed to do certain things, and then now I will not to do it. It's a complete
But can you
turnaround.
can you demonstrate though that isn't just your brain chemistry telling you that?
Well, it's what I will. It's not has nothing to do with what's determined or
But your
anything.
but your will is because your brain is making decisions supposedly, and if the brain is working to do that, then obviously there's a chemical process involved with that. So if you reduce it down, you're basically
No,
it's just the way your brain's working. So there's an
no,
argument to be made. It's just chemicals that are making those things. I don't follow that. I think there is more to it
not
than
yeah,
that.
not really. I wouldn't agree with that because let's say you're experimenting with let's say you're Isaac Newton or something. You're experimenting with alchemy, and you think this chemical or whatever it is that you're taking is
beneficial and it's going to do something, and then once you see that it's not really doing what you expect it to do, then you change your mind. You don't no longer take the chemical or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's you know, it's a change in a belief, which changes your actions, the outcome of what you do.
Right, but that goes into the two types of belief. I mean, obviously you have your first order belief that you believe something, and then we have what you call a second order belief that you believe that what you believe is to be true, because belief is still required to have knowledge. Knowledge is an intersection of truth and belief. And Scott, how are you, man?
Yes.
Good. How are you?
What's up, my friend? I got to go back and listen to some of your podcasts. I know you've had some podcasts lately, but I've been so stuck in Nadia's room that I haven't really had a chance to watch them. They're still available, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We episode
I'll go back
33
and
just
watch it.
aired yesterday. We did a first live show, so
Was it a Q&A?
yeah, with Matt Slick and JD Kane.
Yeah, I saw the post for it, and I would definitely watch that. So it went pretty well.
Yes and no, and here's why. The stream cut out at round 3 for whatever reason. We don't know. No one knows why it cut out. And that's when it was like the final round of the heavyweight fight, and they went at it, and we didn't get it.
I saw that. So
It had to
it
be
cut out. It cut
saving
out,
video.
and I don't know what happened.
Yeah, so it really bummed us out. I mean, we're just hanging our heads like, oh, I wish there was a way that we could have saved it. I don't know.
Nobody was recording it independently on their
Well,
locally.
no, and to be honest, it's our first time ever doing like a hangout because we do everything pre-recorded via Skype.
Mm-hmm.
So we record on Thursdays, we air on Sundays. That's kind of how we roll. Um, so no one touched anything. It just didn't work out.
Yeah, Gremlins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just cut
Well,
off.
how did Slick perform? I mean, I don't want
Well,
to say you had a winner, but I mean, who do you think kind of came out a little bit on top in that epic battle?
with Slick bailing in the first round, and I had to beg him to come back, I will leave it there.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was.
I don't know. Have you watched Nephilim's latest video?
No, I haven't. I haven't really watched a lot of people lately. The reason I'm in here is because Jungle Jorgen's been kind of commenting, and him and I never have had a talk before.
Right.
And I wanted just really to introduce myself to him, say hi, and nice to meet you, and
Yeah, likewise.
and all that. So, but no, I haven't seen Nephilim's recent video at all.
Because he bugged out a few times, and I was so tired, and I wasn't my usual lucid, coherent self, so I was making some faux pas, I guess you can say. But he still pulled this whole, "You're not giving me time, you're not giving me time, you're not giving me time" to explain things, and we're like, "Okay, go ahead, take as much time as you need," and then he kind of rage quit like 3 times. That
Yeah,
tells me all you need to know.
right, and that's kind of what Matt Slick did. Um,
Yeah, but
it's kind of like and I'm friends with Matt Slick, and I don't like talking about people when they're not available to um, defend themselves. But it was like, I'm not getting my way. I'm gonna go to my room. And I'm gonna go ahead and pout.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the behaviors that I felt with last night, at least with round 1, and it went through the whole hangout as well. I think Jungle, you watched it, didn't you?
yeah, I watched it until it cut out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess you're a man of faith, so I'm kind of curious to see what your views were on that exchange.
I thought it was good, his points that he was making, and I don't think that JD Kane was understanding what he was trying to say, basically.
Well, can you elaborate more?
Specifically,
Yeah.
well, the thing about, I think, I don't know if I posted in the comments, the thing about the, what do you call it, the subjective morality of same-sex marriage could apply to anything, and not just same-sex marriage.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
one.
I think I know what you're saying. And I get what you're saying. When I viewed it, twice now, because I wanted to make sure I got everything. And keep in mind that one of the co-hosts on our show is gay. I felt that it was kind of a underhanded attack at the homosexual community, at the gay community, where I have statistics, but the statistics that he's using, and you can go ahead and research it, is from 1982, where, um, yeah, it's from 1982. Nothing is updated that Matt Slick said.
Which would be kind of biased, you think?
Well, how is that
Or
biased?
I mean, it
It's
would
antiquated. I mean, definitely
antiquated.
kind of an old study to be kind of citing, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, exactly. And I can't remember. I know I watched it a couple times. I just can't remember the source he cited. Um, but he cited it a couple times, and I know it was pointed out that it was from 1982, where before that's where the AIDS virus was just kind of coming into the news. Not even, I think the AIDS virus kind of came in the news like around 1984, right?
It was mid '80s. It was
Yeah,
my
mid
teen
80s.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what it was.
Yeah, they didn't know what it was, but they just all of a sudden they're linking it to homosexuality, but
Right.
they're
It's
dismissing
easy
the
to link
fact.
to homosexuality. It was the gay disease when I was growing up.
Yeah, and me too. So you must be the same age, but they're not realizing that it's not only linked to homosexuality, but it's linked to also intravenous drug use. Um, so they're dismissing that fact.
Right. Right. And I totally agree. I mean, we've learned so much more about how it's been transmitted over the years that I mean we've gone away from that whole it's a gay disease because obviously clearly now we know it is not. It's a heterosexual disease. It's a, as you said, intravenous blood transfer caused it to be transmitted. It's prevalent in needle drug use that use needles.
It's a
Um,
human disease, is what it
it's a
is,
human disease.
right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and Steve, did you say you have not yet watched the debate?
I have not yet.
Okay, so in that round, and that's what kind of we're calling it, where Matt Slick, in my opinion, did a lot of reaching, saying, "What if four brothers who are related, who were gay and in love, wanted to get married?" It got to that kind of.
So he's just doing a slippery slope type argument.
Oh, absolutely. And I was kind of watching the body language of my co-host Jerry at that point. Like I think that he was probably hurt, because he's a gay man and a married gay man. Probably that's got to be something that's really tough for him.
Yeah, and it's not easy for us to talk about it either, for that matter.
Why isn't it easy for you?
Well, because we understand that we're basically speaking against the beliefs and activity of very large number of people. And
So then let me ask you this: how is it affecting you personally?
what they do,
Yeah.
well, it affects the country I live in and
No. How does it affect you
the
personally?
educational system and the court system, and basically affects everything going on around us.
Okay, so
But
one
he's
thing,
asking me how's that derived to how that affects you directly in your life, Jungle. That's what he's asking.
right?
Because it changes everything. It changes the
You,
whole system of government. It changes
jungle,
everything.
jungle, back up. I'm asking you personally, and this is what frustrates me as a internet journalist, if I can actually now say that I am. How is it affecting you?
Well, when I look outside, the landscape is totally changed. The landscape is totally different. In other words, you're living. What used to live in like farmland, and now all of a sudden everything is urban development. Basically, it's totally changed.
Okay,
Okay,
Jungle. Let me see if I can try to clarify for you there, Scott. Jungle, if two people are in a room doing something, let's say they're playing chess or they're engaged in a sexual activity.
Yeah, they're trying to say that it shouldn't affect me. What somebody else does shouldn't affect me. That's what they're trying to say.
But people don't realize that it's going to, there's consequences, there's results of what you do. And those results reverberate throughout all of society and everything. And when it comes down to having to be forced to bake a cake for somebody and to put things on the cake that you don't believe in, and then that affects you, and there's all kinds of examples like that. Going to school, going to work, no matter what, it's going to affect it. It all affects you. It affects you, everything you do, basically. So they're trying to say that it doesn't affect me what other people do, but it does.
In either case, how does either one differ to how it affects you directly? I mean, what they're doing either way has no effect on your existence, is what the point is.
You think it has no effect, but I mean,
how would you even know? Let's say, like I said, two people in a room, isolated room. They can be playing chess or they can be engaged in homosexual activity. How does it affect you either way?
One way it affects me greatly is that I have to know about such things. I have to.
So it offends your sensibilities?
I have to know that such things exist in very close proximity to everything I say and do and live in, the world I live in.
Are you getting a Facebook message every time a gay couple has sex?
Notification.
I mean, if you want to know, my wife and I, before I got on this hangout, it was awesome. So I'm just going to let you know.
I didn't get the notification on that, man. Damn it.
I have sex here right now. So just figured I want that to affect you both.
It affects me because I'm jealous. Or envious, I guess.
So, Steve, you'll get a kick out of this. When you and I were in our last conversation, I think it was with NeoCloud, and I can't remember. I'm not sure if I gave NeoCloud this question or the scenario or not, with the gay couple who met with a pastor and were converted to Christianity, and they followed the laws of Christianity, but yet they were still in love. I presented that question to Matt Slick. Couldn't answer the question. He's like, I don't know.
You presented the Christian hillbilly.
Pops. I would love
it was Pops in our hangout. That was his when he came into my hangout, he was Pops, but his grown, obviously you know him as Christian.
Yep, I can't wait to run into him, and I'm going to propose that question. Absolutely.
I can make it happen.
Yeah, that would be a great question for him.
Every day, just about.
What's that?
I run into Christian hillbilly like every other day. So
okay.
If you want to have a one-on-one with him on that, or a hangout with that be the topic, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So could I answer that?
Sure.
It's like I don't get a Facebook response or text or whatever from somebody, but I do see people on the street, and I do have to know about it. I mean,
well, how's that different from a heterosexual couple doing stuff on the street?
Yeah.
Well, because that's the way that families are structured is with a heterosexual couple, and you're changing the whole family. You're changing the whole family structure.
That's not the case anymore.
You're changing everything about society.
See, this is where they're just trying to assert that they're right and I'm wrong, because it's a big difference between a heterosexual marriage, and they're trying to say, oh, well, what if you don't have children? It doesn't matter. It's a heterosexual marriage. That's the way it's supposed to be. It's not anything else is pseudo-sex.
Ask him your question that you had talked about.
But it changes everything about society. It completely changes the landscape.
Jungle.
It changes everything. It changes everything about it.
Jungle. I'm going to ask this one more time. How does it affect you personally?
It affects me because it affects the world around me, and it's the world that I'm obligated to reach with the truth of the gospel.
No, we're done.
Jesus.
Then we're done. There's no point of.
See that he's just saying he's right and I'm wrong. He doesn't want to listen to anything I have to say. So he's totally excluding me from the picture. He doesn't care about what affects me, and he's just done with it.
of continuing on this with this topic at all.
But do you understand I'm obligated? Do you understand I'm
Well, I'm
obligated?
offended by it just by the knowledge that it exists. It wouldn't be a real answer.
No, but
it's still
I'm obligated to
a
reach.
question that has answering nothing to do with the actual question. Because the real answer is it has nothing to do with you personally.
Right.
No, it has everything to do with
nothing
me.
to do with you personally.
I'm
Okay.
obligated to reach the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that's obviously.
You were just talking about subjective morality, and now you're
Hang on, let me
objective morality.
do this. Let me try this on him real quick. Hey, Jungle Dragon, I'm gonna just out myself really quick. I just had really dirty, awesome sex with my wife like a half hour ago. How does that affect you personally?
I already told you, it doesn't affect me because that's the way the families are supposed to be structured.
There you go. He's not listening to anything I say. The marriage bed is undefiled, and that's the way it's supposed to be. A married couple that is a heterosexual couple that have sex the way it was made to be. And to insist that you have to have it another way and force me to accept it is just not right.
No, you just answered my question. Thank you.
Exactly.
That doesn't affect me because that's the way the families are supposed to be structured.
But the homosexuality, just people being gay affects you.
Right. If his wife was a male, how would it make any difference?
Right.
Maybe to him, obviously, it might, but I mean, how would it make a difference to you?
Because it's not the way the family is structured.
So how is the family structured?
With a man and a wife and kids.
Okay, so are you saying that, okay, let's say two couples who are sterile had nasty, dirty sex. How does that affect you now?
There's still a man and a woman.
But they're sterile. You just said kids.
Well, if they can't have kids, then they can't have kids, but there's still a man and a woman. It's the way it's supposed to be.
But you just mentioned kids. You mentioned procreation.
So?
Yeah. Normally that's what would occur. In most cases, that's what would occur. Now, if you're talking about a succession, it's still a man and a woman. There's still nothing wrong with it.
Jungle, isn't that unnatural then?
No,
according to your biblical theology?
There's nothing wrong with that. The marriage bed is undefiled.
Go forth and reproduce and multiply and all that.
The marriage bed is undefiled. There's nothing wrong with it.
So, okay.
There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Trust me, I've known Jungle a while now, and I believe me, my head is flat from
I've popped my Jungle Jargon cherry right now.
Yeah, exactly. You're now just experiencing the glory that is Jungle.
That doesn't seem right for me or fair to me for you to say it doesn't change anything for homosexualities to be, basically changing everything.
Are you basing that upon an objective morality standpoint?
No, yeah, it's objective in that that's what a family is supposed to be.
Okay, what is your basis for the objective? If it's objective morality, you have to have appeal to something that we know to be absolutely what should be the moral code. What is your
scientifically? That's the only way.
God or science? Okay.
Scientifically, that's the way it works. That's the way it's supposed to work scientifically.
What?
What's supposed to work?
It's supposed to.
I understand basic biology. Okay.
It's supposed to be the way you have kids.
I'm not following your argument at all.
It's supposed to be the way you have kids and raise kids. That's supposed to be the right way. It's supposed to be the way that works.
If I would have known I would have been on this call, I would have to the liquor store much earlier before the closing time.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you. Look at you. You need a few of these to handle.
I have one of these left. So.
Well, I don't know if you were listening in before. We were talking about. We asked, how do we know the age of the universe?
No, I was busy at that time.
Yeah, I'm explaining to him, how we can, determine light, how far away it is, the redshift, and all this other stuff, and of course, John gets into his physics type thing, and I'm trying to interpolate in a way that I know physics to the way he relates it, and yeah, they don't usually match up most of the time, you know.
But it does make sense though.
Oh, I
What?
don't know about that.
Time does pass at different rates in the universe, depending on where you are.
How do you know this?
It's observed.
No. How do you know this? You got to focus here.
Because there is no absolute measure of time or distance in the universe. It's an observed phenomena. It's observed. Relativity is entirely observed now that we have detected gravitational waves from colliding neutron stars and black holes. So it's not a theory anymore in the sense that it's been observed. Gravitational waves have been detected. Dilation of time has been observed as well. So it's a reality, and the black hole has been photographed. The black hole has been observed, at least the surrounding area. So that's a reality. So we're not talking about something that's not real here. We're talking about something that's absolute. It's absolutely true that there is no absolute measure of time or distance in the universe. Time here is not the same rate of time there. Distance here is not the same distance there. End of story.
Because it's observed.
How?
There's all kinds of proofs. There's all kinds of proofs for it that time doesn't pass at the same rate. The cell phone, GPS, all kind of proofs.
I'm starting to realize that Jungo can't clearly answer a simple question. How?
I think what he's trying to say is that gravity, different gravitational effects will affect gravity. The higher the gravity,
Mostly gravity. Yeah.
He's talking about going through different frames of references, like there's some kind of like a movie thing. Like you have each one is a frame, and I'm not understanding his argument by different frames of references. Because the frame of reference is
186,000 miles is a frame of
what do you mean by
reference.
that? By frame of reference, 1,086 miles is the
That's
distance.
how long. That's how far it takes for light to pass through in 1 second. That's a frame of reference.
Correct. That's not a frame of reference. That's really not.
Sure it is. Sure it is, because
This is amusing that Steve, well, at least back then, I don't know what he thinks today, but back then he says, that's not a frame of reference. It's not a frame of reference. Trying to say that what I'm saying is not true. It is a frame of reference of time and distance. It's not just distance, it's time and distance. That's a frame of reference. As long as you allocate a measure of time and a measure of distance, or rate of time and a measure of distance. So that is a frame of reference. It's how fast light travels in 1 second. You allocated 186,000 miles for the distance, and you allocated 1 second for the time. That's a frame of reference. That's the rate that the speed that light travels in 186,000 miles. So that rate is not going to be the same everywhere in the universe. And that's the point of the discussion. There is no absolute measure of time or distance in the universe because it depends on your frame of reference. It depends where you are in the universe. It depends the amount of expansion where you are in the universe or contraction, as the case may be.
because that frame of reference changes, the distance changes, and the time changes.
No, but frame of reference is just how we're looking at something. We can set equations to say, okay, we want this to be our inertial frame of reference in general relativity, meaning that we basically are saying how does things look or appear from our perspective from that, because there is no preferred frame of reference, meaning
because the speed of light is always 186,000 miles in a given frame of reference. Now, if you change the location, it's still going to be at 186,000 miles a second, but the second's going to take longer and the distance is going to be shorter relative to where you are. So that
that frame of reference is the rate of the speed of light where you happen to be. And if you think about it, it's going to speed up and slow down the speed of light too, and that's another can of worms.
That
It's
any frame of reference you have that you want to make the inertial frame of reference is just as valid as any other. That's the
it's
whole point of relativity.
it's an arbitrary distance that you choose for a second in an arbitrary measure of time, but those arbitrary measurements that you choose happen to shrink the closer you get to a black hole.
Jungle, can you answer a question? I seriously, can you answer?
Relative
This is going to turn out to be my
to
favorite
us.
hangouts of all time. I'm going to love
Relative
it.
to us.
You've got a journalist who can ask very effective questions and expects mostly coherent answers.
Jungle, you're making
Jungle is
Jungle, you're making
nemesis now for that. Go ahead.
Jungle, you're making Rob Beasley look sane right now.
No. Come on.
You really are.
No, I'm not saying I'm talking science here. I'm talking what it's observed.
No, you're not answering us simple questions. These are questions, Jungle. Come on. I mean, I've never met you before, and you've been commenting on some posts of mine, so I figured I'm going to come in and talk to this guy and say hi, and I walked into this.
Okay.
Yeah, now they're just having fun.
I'm waiting for you to demand controls.
I love Jungle in his sweet naivety kind of thing. I mean, Jungle is really he's pretty cool.
Yeah, tell me otherwise. Explain to me.
He speaks an entirely different language.
Explain to me how I'm wrong.
Steve, do you think Juggle's for real? Because I'm.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, Juggle's hung out with like the Hovens and stuff like that. I mean, he's been around the circle for a while. I mean, he's not a Poe. No, he really. We've had our discussions about Young Earth creationism, in depth actually. And
I'm actually from the Amazon. I'm from the Amazon jungle.
Stuff, man.
I'm from South
started
America.
On a flood or sequential sequencing because I have not yet figured out what he meant by that. A dozen people.
This is another one. He said, "See, what is sequential sequencing? It's significant sequencing. It's concatenation. It's programming in living organisms." And watch him talk nonsense here.
People are still trying to figure out what sequential sequencing means as far as
in biology.
Not just like PCR for DNA reproduction. So
you don't know that DNA is sequenced. There's a certain order in DNA. You don't know that.
I know there's an arbitrary thing. I mean,
specific
any way the nucleotide bases are arranged, that's a sequence. But you said.
But it's not an arbitrary. It's not an arbitrary order. It's a specific sequence.
And I'm gonna cut. I'm gonna bow out. I'm gonna bow out.
Oh man, do you already have enough?
I've had enough. Steve, I'll talk to you later. Jungle,
I'll catch up with you later. I'm gonna watch that podcast, but man. I gotta hang with you more, man. I love listening to your questions and things of that nature.
Yeah, and if you wanna,
amazing, man.
If you wanna interview me sometime, I'll be willing for you.
Entertainment, that's for sure.
You'll be right after Jackal and Glenn.
Or debate. You have a debate with someone if you want.
Well, I have two other co-hosts that I need to converse about that with, so I can't make that.
Jungle Jargon Hour.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, but it was nice meeting you anyway.
Likewise. Have a good night, everybody.
Catch you later, buddy. I'll see you later on.
All right.
No, that was pretty funny.
That was good. I'm glad he came over because I was.
Oh, he's a really nice guy. Really, 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 really nice guy. I'm gonna go have another smoke. I've invited some more people, but unfortunately.
Yeah, well, maybe we should go over and join Neff. Oh, you don't want to go to Neff's. Hang on.
Nah. I mean, if I'm going to hang out enough joins, that's fine, but I don't want to go to freaking his hanging out, because then he just...
Now he's got a bad mouth Neff a little bit. But hey, we all need to learn something, right? We all learn and get better. And we all have reasons for what we do, too, for that matter. So Neff Neff has reasons for what he does, and he learns, just like everybody else. And of course, like see, I'm here with this video interviewing a person, and they're talking about rough sex and using bad words and everything, and this is not the kind of material that I would like to be presenting, So it's like you got to have consideration for us too, and they, well, they really don't. Maybe you're not aware of it too much, but there are reasons for us doing what we do, and of course we learn as time goes by too, and we maybe give and take a little bit and try to understand and try to make things work. But another thing I wanted to explain was that it was not long after this that the people started sniping, and then I just gave up the Google Hangouts completely. That's why I never did Google Hangouts after that. It's because people were sniping, and then they're putting all kinds of bad content on your channel, and that was just wrong. What Google was allowing to happen, it was really messed up. So I just quit. I didn't want to have any content like that. But anyway, so now we have this system. Now maybe I can have some hangouts with some people if anybody wants to join. But not necessarily right now. But I'm just saying. So just keep that in mind when he starts bad mouthing Neff. There's we got reasons too.
Dominates and just kicks people.
Yeah, I tried to get you in there and stuff, but I don't know, whatever.
I don't deal with Neff. I can handle Brett. I've dealt with Brett times now. Brett Keane, and any of those people I can pretty well deal with. But Neff, I can't. I think he's the most dishonest, narcissistic person I've ever met in my entire life. Who basically will, if he doesn't get enough airtime in, then he just gets all pissy and rage quits.
Well, I'm looking.
Literally, you can give him 5 minutes of a diatribe, he won't say anything, and then says, "Well, I haven't gotten to my point yet." It's like, fuck, be concise, be succinct, get to your point in a matter of 30 seconds. Let other people address it.
Yeah, if you know of any other people in the field of science, some scientific field or something, I'm interested in learning, things here and there,
Yeah, I know a few, but I mean, I'd have to schedule something like that.
Yeah, I mean, because I want the answers just like everybody else. I want to know what's going on. So, and basically, the only thing that's puzzling in my mind is the time, the time element. Like what you're saying that you think it's 13.8 billion years old. The
Well,
universe.
that's pretty well the consensus, unless you can write a scientific paper demonstrating otherwise. It's just
Well, I just proved otherwise. I just proved otherwise because the time doesn't pass at the same rate. But anyways,
okay. Well, write that in a scientific paper and just see how far that flies. Because just asserting something as fact is not going to work.
I have tried, but
you got Einstein, you have physicists, and then you have you, and you're just making a statement.
No, but I'm
what
not
you're saying
disagreeing.
invalidates all of that. Okay,
but I'm not disagreeing with it.
And you have to submit it and let them go. Okay, this guy's actually onto something, or
Yeah, just by way of repeating. Yeah, it's true that there is no absolute measure of time or distance in the universe. It's a fabrication that's a result of energy that makes matter, that has mass, that has gravity, that dilates distance and time and contracts distance and slows down time so that physical things can take place. And it's all a fabrication. It's there, time is totally irrelevant. When you're talking about the creation, it's totally irrelevant because time itself is created. So just keep that in mind.
don't
Right.
total loon.
Right,
And I'm going to obviously go to the loon portion, even though I love you.
But you can see that doesn't prove anything. If I'm rejected,
No,
if my
I
paper
have
is
no idea what
rejected,
you're
it still
talking about,
doesn't prove
Joe.
anything, right? It still doesn't prove that I'm wrong, even if it's rejected.
Well, we don't deal with proof. We deal with evidence. Remember, we've already discussed this, and there's no evidence to support your conjecture because I don't think your conjecture even is coherent. But
No, but it's not even my conjecture. I'm just telling you what's already observed. It's
okay.
observed that time passes at different rates. It's observed that the time frame
we've
of
we've
references.
established that gravity and speed, velocity will change the rate at which relative to
Exactly.
the observer changes.
No,
Don't
no.
see how it's any effect in your
Relative to
argument.
gravity. Relative to gravity. Not
No,
not
relative to the
just the
observer.
observer, not just the observer, not just the speed, but relative to the gravity.
Gravity is not a frame of reference. You can't say relative
Well,
to gravity unless
it's
you can
relative to
if
the
you're
amount,
do an equation, you can do like a partial differentiation where you're saying, okay, I'm holding these constant relative to something,
but it's
but
relative to
in
the
the state of
amount of
relativity,
gravity.
you're not. There's nothing relative to gravity. It's relative to your
To the
position, to
amount.
your observational position, your inertial frame of reference.
Well,
Yeah, it's gravity that determines the frame of reference. The state of the frame of reference is determined by gravity. And Steve was saying gravity is not a frame of reference. Gravity is what determines the frame of reference, okay? Have fun with that.
it's relative to the amount of gravity and relative, to where you are in the universe.
I don't know. We'll get some people. If not, maybe I can go through my list or something. But
Yeah,
I don't think you need people, man.
I invited everybody on my list twice, I think. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know. I'm gonna go look around then, jungle. If you want to, like maybe try again later,
All right. That sounds good.
so we can get some, more diverse viewpoints, and maybe if I can find somebody more heavily in physics, they can engage you on it. That cool?
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I love you, bro. I do. I mean, I try to understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, he likes to laugh at me and everything. Uh, but if you don't listen, you're not going to know what I'm trying to say. No, that's the thing.
I think you're totally honest. I respect your honesty when it comes to that. I know you're not a Poe. I know you're not somebody who's trying to be dishonest or in any stretch of imagination. So I do got your back on that. Okay,
Yeah, I appreciate it.
you're welcome, man. And I'll be searching around. If not, I'll contact you maybe in a half hour. Okay, sound good?
Yeah, that's good. That's all right.
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Keeping in mind this was 3 years ago, pretty much.
Okay, so this looks like it concludes this portion of the immoral atheist thinking that God is immoral. There is a verse on that somewhere. I kind of lost track of it, I guess. But anyway, let me see if I can find it. Okay, here it is. Excuse me. Okay, it's I think it's Isaiah. It says, or Ezekiel, or something. No, I forget. It says, yet you say the way of the Lord is not right. Hear now, O house of Israel, which could be anybody. Is my way not right? Is it not? Is it not your ways that are not right? So here we have immoral people that have no set standard of justice and have an arbitrary standard of justice. They're
Yeah, no absolute standard of justice, which would be God, of course. God's standard.
arbitrarily saying that their maker is not moral. Now the thing is that people, atheist people, don't seem to understand that their maker is the one who establishes what is moral and what's not, what's right and what's not. Because he made everything. He made you. He's the one who sets the standard. And anybody that comes along and says that, oh, hey, I know more than my maker or I know more than God is just, doesn't understand who God is. And that's just it. So God is the one who raises up nations, and when they sin, he judges them. So when God judges a nation, you turn around and say, oh, that's not right. No, it was the nation that wasn't right. It was the nation that deserved the judgment. And the babies are a part of that nation that did what was horrible in the sight of God. So God is a judge. He's the one that determines who lives, who dies, who has salvation, who doesn't. God knows the heart, and he judges rightly. So to say that God kills baby makes him immoral is not even, you don't have no clue of what's going on. He's judging a nation that did not do what was right. And those babies are part of that nation. He is God. That's what he does.
And babies grow up to be big people, big bad people too.
He judges nations. That's what he does. And he made the nation. He can judge the nation. I mean, that's so obvious. And yet you're going to try to say that he's not moral in order so that you can be immoral, trying to get away with your immorality because you think he's immoral. That's not going to fly. It doesn't work. And that's that.
There you go. Preach it, brother. Preach it, my brother. Oh, that's me. Oh, well. Okay, so yeah. That wasn't so bad, I guess. It was interesting. And I got some new slides. So, as we're watching my new set of slides, which is a continuation of my slides, basically. I guess I'll just wrap up here. We don't have any more takers. We got atheists avoiding me like a plague. We got soccer accounts attacking me on a daily basis and not revealing who they are. Not wanting me to know who they are. And because they're ashamed of who they are, I guess, apparently. I mean, what other reason would somebody not show their face? They're ashamed of their position and who they are and who they're talking to or something. Ashamed about something. They don't want something to be known. They're hiding something, in other words. So, yeah, I see a lot of that. I could understand, once in a while, there'd be maybe a scientist, that doesn't want people to know that who he is and stuff like that. But I get a lot of it. That's why I've been showing. I was going to show some more, but I guess I lost the soccer count, the soccer counts that were asking me questions. But I'm always getting these people, and you go to their channel, and it's no content, no content, no content. But anyway, I guess that's what they feel they have to do. But and that's always they. The thing is that they're arguing with me. They're posting in comments and everything, but they just won't. They won't come to talk to me.
They won't come on a live stream to talk because they know they're going to be exposed for the nonsense that they believe, you know. Because all atheists believe nonsense, and all unbelievers believe nonsense, and even agnostics believe something, and they don't believe the truth. And that's what we're about, is teaching the truth. You have a maker. Your maker is your only hope that there is. There is no other hope.